Hey guys, Dimension Jump, and today I'm doing my top 5 favourite optional bosses in video games. Now, optional bosses in games, I feel like it's a good challenge. They're kind of like more of a different class of bosses, I would say, because they are much more of a somewhat challenge to some of the main bosses you'll fight in a particular game. Whether that's the attack patterns, the amount of damage that or the amount of damage that they give, and whatever area of the map you might be on, or what kind of boss arena you're in. And today I'm just be talking about some of my favourites to come out of video games. So for number 5 is Phantom Ganon from Tears of the Kingdom. Now, when it comes to Phantom Ganon, I'm mainly talking about the ones you can find around Hyrule. I'm not talking about the one in the main story, even though even though the Phantom Ganon in the main story it's basically the same one as all the other ones you fight in the game. And what I like about about these fights, is that one, there are multiple versions of Phantom Ganon scattered around the world. But I do like how at first, before you fight Phantom Ganon himself, you have these like sort of like gloom hands just coming out of nowhere and just start attacking you, and that can be intimidating at first. But then I found out that you could use bomb flowers just to get rid of them easily. And then when it comes to Phantom Ganon himself, he'll have various weapons. So like he'll either have a spear, a sword, or a long sword, or a long ranged weapon, or whatever. And yeah, this can be a really interesting boss fight. And I think the most intense one, or the one that feels the most restrictive, which I think helps the boss fight a lot, is the one that's underneath the Great Deku Tree. And the reason for that is because the boss room, or the boss arena, is basically just the inside trunk of the Deku Tree, and that's really restrictive. And it can help, but it's kind of like, on one hand, it's really cool and interesting because it's a restrictive boss arena, unlike the other boss fights we do have with Phantom Ganon, because they're more open out, and they're more in the open. Whereas with the one in the Deku Tree, it's more restrictive, and you have to be more precise with like ranged attacks and close range combat and stuff like that. And overall, I do really enjoy this fight. I think it's a nice sort of challenge to the game, and I do really like the whole fight as a whole. For number 4 is Caroline and Justine, as well as Lavenza from Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal. Now, when it comes to this fight, that both Caroline and Justine, as well as Lavenza, are basically the same thing, or the same boss fight, except it's two different. You've got like, it's basically the same person, but Caroline and Justine are the split personalities, I would say, of Lavenza, because a bit of a spoilers for Persona 5 as well as Royal. Before the events of the game, Yael Labalth took over the Velvet Room and split Lavenza into with Caroline and Justine, so he could prevent Joker's journey throughout the course of Persona 5 as well as Royal. So that's why I'm kind of putting both Caroline and Justine and Lavenza in at the same spot. And what I like about this fight is that they are both quite difficult, and I do like the whole challenge of you having to fight Persona users in a sense, or because both Caroline and Justine and Lavenza are attendants of the Velvet Room, and they are both, and they all have uses of the Persona Compendium, so they can switch personas on the fly. So they're kind of like Joker in a sense. So they can choose a particular persona, and they all have strong moves, like let's say a strong electric attack, or a strong ice attack, or moves that can either increase attacks or decrease attacks or stuff like that. And it's more of a sense of like, you have to think on more of your feet of like, okay, these are different from other bosses in that I fought in the game. How do I fight these attendants? And yeah, they're kind of nice, but I think one of the things that kind of brings these boss fights down a bit is the sense is because of Yoshitsune and Izanagi Okami Pikaro. I think I'm pronouncing that persona right. I'm not 100% sure because with Yoshitsune you can just make it stupidly OP. Like you can have it have drain at sudden attacks or repel attacks, and then you can use its signature move as well as charge or power charge. I don't remember the name, and yeah, that's basically when it comes to Yujitsune. And with Izanagi no Okami Pikaro, it's a very very busted persona because it's got the myriad of truths, and if you combine that with attack up and power charge or magic charge. I don't 100% remember the name. It might be mind charge or something. It'll just double, or it will double the next magic attack. And even though I do love the fight between Caroline and Justine and Lavenza, those two personas just mentioned, Yojitsune and Izanagi no Okami Pikaro, make it 100% more easier to fight. So yeah, but they're still enjoyable though. Still enjoy them. For number 3 is Gleeok and its many variants from Tears of the Kingdom. Now, with Gleeok, I would say that when it was introduced in the first game, it was kind of difficult because it got an extra head each time. I think the final time you fight it, it has like 4 or 5 heads. I'm not 100% sure. It has been a while since I've played the original Zelda game. But with Gleeok in Tears of the Kingdom, you have different variants, kind of like the ones in the original Zelda game, where you've got a fire Gleeok, an electric Gleeok, an ice Gleeok, and the King Gleeok. And what I like about these variants is that they all, even though they have similar moves, they all feel kind of fresh and unique because you're not just fighting a Gleeok, just a normal Gleeok. You're fighting a Gleeok, but it's got fire powers, or ice powers, or electric powers, or all 3 of those powers combined. And I do like how you can find these Gleeoks. Like you can find them throughout the sky, or all of the sky, the mainland of Hyrule, and the depths. Because I know you can fight 1 in the depths, I think 2 or 3 in the main surface land of Hyrule, and then like 3 or 4 in the sky, and they're all fun. And I do like how you can use different types of attacks and different things to use against them. Like the easiest one to use, or the easiest move or tactic to do, is to get all 3 heads by combining an arrow with a Kisai, because the Kisais home in on enemies as a sort of homing attack, and if you do the eye thing on the different Gleeoks, then it should work. Like use the ice Kisais on the fire one, the fire ones on the ice ones, that sort of thing. And yeah, I do really enjoy how these are very very difficult, and you can try and find various ways of how to take them down. And yeah, I think one of my favourite optional fights in Tears of the Kingdom, just because of how tough they can be and just how satisfying it can be to finally take one down, because it's really hard, but because I think Gleeok is one of those bosses where it just feels satisfying when you take one down and you think you can take on the rest. It's kind of that thing I feel like when it comes to Gleeok as a boss in Tears of the Kingdom. For number 2 is Cynthia from Pokemon Black and White and Black and White 2. Now, Cynthia as a whole is probably the toughest champion in all of the Pokemon series, because her team is so varied in types that they can each take out a bunch of your Pokemon, and you might not be able to take at least 1 or 2 of a Pokemon before thinking, okay, I might try and level up a bit more. That's basically Cynthia in a nutshell. And in Black and White and Black and White 2, she makes a return, I think, because she appears in the post game of that game, or both games, because you can mainly find her in a resort area, and you can find her in her house, and when you get to fight her, and yeah, she's as tough as she was back in in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. But she has, I think, one or two new Pokemon because I believe she has a Braviary in her Black and White team, and maybe another Unova Pokemon, but I don't 100% remember. And then in Black and White 2, those Pokemon change, I think, to a Glaceon and a Togekiss, if I'm remembering correctly. And then you can fight her again in that Champion Cup tournament league thing that you can do in Black and White 2. And yeah, I would say she's as tough as she is as she was in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. I think she's one of the few champions you can fight like multiple times. Because I know you can fight Red and Blue to a stretch, because you can fight Red in Hard Gold and Soul Silver, as well as Blue. And you can also fight them again in Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. And yeah, but with Cynthia, I do like how you can just fight it over again. And if you've beat her in the resort area I mentioned, you can fight her again. But I think during the summer or the spring, I think it's mainly during the summer you can fight her. But yeah, Cynthia is a very really cool Pokemon. No, not Pokemon. A really cool optional boss, and yeah, I do hope that in future games we get to see more of this sort of thing happening. And for number one is the Valkyries from God of War Ragnarok 2018. Now, with the Valkyries, I do enjoy how they all have their own specific moves, and they all are separated into different realms. So, for instance, with the whole realms thing, you can find them in these different chambers, and you can only access them once you've gotten the chisel, which you can get about halfway through the main. No, not halfway through the main story. As soon as you free Mimir, which is about a third. I don't know how. Let's just say quite early on in the game, and then once you go on that chisel, you can access the chamber to find all the Valkyries. And with their moves, I think they're really cool, and I think that what makes them unique from each other, and they don't feel the same a lot of the time, because you've got a Valkyrie that can summon a mini snowstorm and then as well as shooting out chunks of ice towards you. You've got another one that can summon enemies from the ground, another one that can summon fireballs from the sky, and so on and so forth. And yeah, that's what makes the Valkyries so interesting and so unique from each other, because even though they have some similar moves, they all have their own unique special moves that make them different and unique and kind of a challenge to fight. And I do like how they have their own mini story in a sense in the game, because they have all been corrupted, and as well as their queen. And then and as soon as you free each one, you learn more and more about them and about how Odin corrupted them, I think. And then Sigrun has to trap all of them and then trap herself so that none of them can hurt anyone. And yeah, I think that's a really interesting story. And I do like how this kind of continues a bit, or how it's referenced in God of War Ragnarok, because there are some moments in that game where the Valkyries are referenced, and you do get to see them again in the game. And yeah, and I do like how that it's just really interesting. And I do like how Sigrun, when you get to face her, she has all of the other moves from every other Valkyrie. So that means she can summon fireballs, she can summon an ice storm, she can block with her wings, as well as using them to attack after like 5 seconds. And she's probably the hardest one to fight, because she's the queen of the Valkyries. She has all these awesome moves that you can use against you, the player. And yeah, I would say that the Valkyries are probably some of the best optional bosses in a video game ever, and I do really enjoy fighting against them. So that's been my top 5 favourite optional bosses in video games. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.